Hello, welcome to Tales from the Cryptographers, Volume 2, Episode 2, whatever. Today I'm going to be talking about the Mark of the Beast and the number 666, which is quite a topic. There's a lot to be said about what the Mark of the Beast is and how it's not just something at the end of time for the apocalypse, which is what most people believe. At the end, before Armageddon, there'll be the Mark of the Beast, and this is a false indoctrination. People want to get out of what the Mark of the Beast actually is. They don't like what it means. They haven't liked it since John wrote it down. And when I explain the information surrounding what the Mark of the Beast is, it's not a hard thing to follow. It's something that's easily understood. And when you understand what it is, you'll see exactly why nobody's telling you what it is, and nobody wants to talk about what it is. So, let's just get right to it. The Mark of the Beast is mentioned in 4 passages in Revelation 13, 11 through 8, 14, 9 through 11, chapter 15, verse 2, 16, verse 2, 19, verse 20, and 20, verse 4. So what is that, 6? Yeah, 6 verses in the book of Revelation. But it represents a concept that spans through the entirety of Scripture. And I will show you what that is. So, the main passage that explains what the Mark of the Beast is the first mention in Revelation in chapter 13, verses 11 through 18. And I'll read that now. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. He exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and he causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. That's a riddle. Some people don't like the idea that the Bible's giving people riddles, but it's a riddle. It says if you can calculate the number of his name, then you'll know who he is. So, before we get into what the Mark of the Beast is, a little background on what this is saying. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but the beast is coming out of the sea. There's so much to biblical imagery, but a 7-headed beast, 7-headed dragon, it's a concept. The whole thing's encrypted. Like this is Tales from the Cryptographers. We're talking about cryptography in Hebrew literature. it says in Revelation, that let me read it to you. It's better if I read this stuff than if I just try to paraphrase. Revelation 12, verse 9, the chapter before, it's in the context. And a great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, Satan, who deceiveth the whole world, was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So, the dragon, the serpent, the devil, Satan, those are all the same entity, and the serpent referring to the Garden of Eden that deceived Eve. And so when you see the harlot of Babylon flying around on the back of the dragon, or you see the dragon with multiple heads, the idea is that what started in the garden with the one-headed snake has grown to cover the earth, and now it has 7 heads. So, and Eve, who was just Eve in the garden, has glorified herself as God, just like the serpent tempted her to do. She ate the apple. Now she's flying around on the back of the dragon, drunk with the blood of all the saints who didn't want to eat the apple. Just rhetoric right there. But, so it's expressing this idolatry growing out of the garden and covering the whole earth and ruling the world is what they're trying to describe. So when you get to chapter 13, and he sees a beast rising out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns upon his name, and the names of blasphemy. There's so much to this stuff. What I want to point out is that this beast, it has 2 horns like a lamb. Like Jesus, the Lamb of God. So it looks like Jesus. That's what they're saying. And this beast has a deadly wound that was healed, like Christ, who was crucified and was healed. So they're saying that this thing will look like Christ. It'll look like a good thing. And people make a lot of conjecture about what that is. A lot of people think it was Rome that was destroyed and became Roman Catholicism and survived, and it put on the image of Christ. And there might be something to that. I'm not going to knock it, but I'm not going to say that it's right. And the more we get into what the Mark of the Beast is, you'll see that it's something that we all share involvement with. And so even if it fits on to Rome and its survival as Roman Catholicism, it does not limit it to such a thing, because this is personal. It's also ruling the world. And you can see how what the Mark of the Beast is ruling the world. It goes from the top to the bottom of human society. So when it says that he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of miracles, it's talking about witchcraft. This thing is doing magic to take control of the minds of the people. Like the King James translators didn't like to use the word magic, so they used the word miracles. And deception and witchcraft go hand in hand, because it's about subduing somebody's mind. It's about possessing them with an energy form that they identify with and give life to. And the Mark of the Beast is all about some magic, as we'll see. But so much to this stuff. But so Mark is the first thing we'll look at. Mark is the word charagma. This is where we get the word character from. And mark is a word that can mean to impress an image upon. So when I'm talking about magic and I'm saying that you're embodying an energy form, like an image is an energy form. All things are energy forms by all means, but when you see something, it enters your mind and you recognize it, and that thought or that memory will live inside of you. Like when your kid watches Superman, and then he's running around the room flying, and I'm Superman, and going crazy. I used to run around saying, I have the power, because I loved He-Man. And, like, my sisters and my mother will tell you lots of stories about me pretending to be He-Man. It's because I saw an image that I embodied, and then I gave life to it. So the mark is the word charagma, and it has the idea of impressing an image on something. This is a word that can be used. Let me just read it to you out of. This is from Little and Scott's Greek English Lexicon, Oxford Clarendon Press, 1940. Charagma, any mark engraved and printed or branded. The serpent's mark, i.e. its bite or sting. I wonder where they got that. That's interesting. That goes right in to where we're going with this. But an imperial inscription, stamped document, brand on a camel, carved work, the impress of a coin, hence stamped money or coins. Metaphorically, a mark, stamp, or character, or an endorsement. So, what I want to focus on is that mark is a word for money, for a coin. And money is an old form of magic. It's about the transformation of soul substance into something that you can transform into somebody else's soul substance. This is an ancient form of superstitious magic. And it's sort of real. Like, money's just a piece of paper. Like, it's not good for doing much but snorting some cocaine with or wiping your butt, you know? Like, the fact that we ascribe a value to it beyond a piece of paper is something that's completely given life to by our minds alone. Like, in our minds alone is that thing worth something, and because we enter into agreements to ascribe a value to this thing is the only reason it has any worth. And when systems collapse, all that paper ain't going to do nothing for nobody. Like, the value of the coin was that, like, you could go make a nail out of it, you know, like, and not a lot of coins left in the world, but that was the whole idea, is like that money was actually, like, that coin was valuable. But, you know, the idea that the mark can mean money is a big hint to what the mark of the beast is. And, like, nobody missed this, and they're all lying to you is what I think. Everybody that tells you some kind of story besides the mark of the beast is money, like, it says you can't buy or sell without it. Like, you can't buy or sell without it. The word mark means money, and you can't buy or sell without it. Hello? Think there's a reason why all these churches ain't telling you the mark of the beast is money? Think it'll interfere with their business? I think it will. Duh. Okay, but this is gonna get worse. Like, you know, you think, like, we're just getting started. So mark can mean money. You can't buy or sell without it. And then you get the riddle, the number of his name, 666. Now, interestingly enough, the number of somebody's name is gematria. Gematria is the numbering of an alphabet. And, oh man, I had something good on that. I came across somebody actually saying they knew where gematria came from. This is from Mapping Time, the Calendar and Its History by E.G. Richards. And he says, the use of alphanumeric systems permits every name or word to be assigned a value by adding up the value of its constituent letters. This practice is sometimes known as gematria. A similar pastime is the reverse, to take a name and derive from it a number. A famous example is the number 666, referred to as the mark of the beast, which he says is the Antichrist, in the book of Revelations. Many other names have been proposed, including Nero, Caesar Nero, and Adolf Hitler. If we transcribe Nero into Hebrew letters, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and work out the number using the alphanumeric system, we get 666. Many other games were played, including one established the numerical relationships between people. They are not extinct even today. So, I thought that was interesting. It's a book on calendars. He's talking about the origins of Gematria, which nobody actually knows who started it. But it's the numbering of the Hebrew alphabet. They numbered the Greek alphabet. They consider the numbering of the alphabet as old as the alphabets themselves. And Gematria goes with A being 1, B being 2, and it goes up to 10. And when you get to 10, you go 20, 30, 40. When you get to 100, you go 200, 300, 400. And if you... So, Caesar was God. Christians worship Jesus as God, the embodiment of God. So, and he was their king, and they thought disloyalty to their king meant damnation. So they were opposing Caesar as God, and they'd be put to death for it. That was the situation. They were being tortured to death, and Christians were heavily persecuted. And they were persecuted the most under Caesar Nero. Caesar Nero is the one who killed the majority. He was involved, like, he killed a bunch of the apostles. I'm not going to look at how many, but he killed a bunch of them. And so, to say anything bad about Caesar, get your head cut off, you know? So they want to distribute a document about a vision that John had from God, you know, and they can't talk bad about Caesar, so So the first thing they do is, like, you got to know Hebrew. Like, you got to transcribe his name into Hebrew, and then you got to calculate the number of his name. And while that sounds a little far-fetched, there's evidence that this was actually a practice in the first century. So, I have an article. It's a good article on the Mark of the Beast. I was pretty impressed with it because it kind of went through most of the known ways to interpret the Mark of the Beast. It was thorough enough. It's really good. Let me see who wrote it. Craig R. Coaster, and he's Lutheran. He's from Luther Seminary. All kind of people produce good stuff. This is a pretty good article, which he titled "The Number of the Beast in Revelation 13 in Light of Papyri, Graffiti, and Inscriptions." So he's doing his homework from the ground up, which any good scholar will trace any kind of information back to the dirt it came from. So, but in this article, he says a lot of good stuff. I really recommend checking it out. It's a free PDF online. He says on the method of transliteration, transliterating Nero's name and title into Hebrew characters has been a way to connect Nero to the beast number. A major question is whether some of Revelation's early readers would be able to do the calculation into Hebrew letters, since the book itself is written in Greek. It is important that the two occasions the author does make explicit reference to Hebrew. And in both cases, he transliterates Hebrew names into Greek characters. The names are Abaddon and Harmageddon. The issue is whether the author could actually expect a select group of readers who had understanding to do that in reverse by transliterating Greek names into Hebrew characters. What he doesn't mention is that he's not even directly telling them, he's giving them a number, and then they have to guess who the name that the number represents, and then transliterate it into Hebrew. But it's not that far-fetched. When you understand what Hebrew literature really is, this is something that they do. They're into this kind of thing, by all means. I mean, they spell words backwards and all kind of crazy stuff in Scripture. Like, it's just something that whoever wrote the Bible liked to do. So, but he goes on to say, there were Jewish communities in most, if not all, of the cities which Revelation's intended readers lived, and at least some of the readers were probably of Jewish background. Therefore, it is helpful to ask how Jewish inscriptions in papyri might contribute to our understanding of the possibility that some of the readers may have been able to do the necessary calculation using Hebrew letters. And he goes on to give some direct examples of this being a common practice back then. And so when you spell out Caesar Nero in Greek, the Greek way of spelling Caesar Nero is Kaiser Neron. So when you transliterate, which means to phonetically spell a word in another language, when you transliterate Kaiser Neron into Hebrew and then add the grammatric value of those letters into numbers, it adds up to 666. And I didn't make a list of the textual variants, but there was a common textual variant in the Mark of the Beast. Instead of 666, it was 616. Okay, so you have ancient manuscripts that instead of writing down 666 in Revelation, they wrote 616. And in Latin, instead of Kaiser Neron, they dropped the N and wrote Kaiser Nero. N has a value of 50. So, in Latin-speaking countries, they spelled his name differently, so it had the same value. So, the difference between transliterating Greek or Latin into Hebrew and then adding up the value of the words, both match. So you have two witnesses that the name that the number of the beast is referring to adds up to Caesar Nero. And you're not going to get a stronger case than that. And Caesar Nero's face was all over Roman coins. His face is all over Roman coins. And on all of the Roman coins that his face is on, it's referring to idolatry. He's holding the corn wheat, which that goes back to Isis and Osiris and the corn gods of the ancient world. I give you the corn every year. And that's old solstice and equinox festivals, which is the wheel of the year. It goes back to celebrating the death and rebirth of the sun, bringing back crops so we can survive another year. And he's got pictures of the door of the temple of Janus, I believe, on some of the coins, and he's got pictures of himself with wings, which is the power of God. So, directly associating him depicting himself as a god, like, man, there's so much to this stuff. The whole reason they started using like coins themselves, like in the system of money itself, like it goes back to worshiping the sun and the stars, the sun, moon, and stars. I'd like to have more quotes on this, but The History of Money by Jack Weatherford, it says, in particular, gold was considered a divine substance. People around the world noted the resemblance of its color to the sun, a coincidence which they described a deeper meaning. The ancient Egyptians believed that gold was sacred to Ra, the sun god, and they buried great quantities of it with their corpses in the divine pharaohs. Among the Incas of South America, gold and silver represented the sweat of the sun and the moon, and they covered the walls of their temples with these precious metals. Even after their conquest, the Spaniards took the Indian gold and silver and the natives and decorated their new Christian temples with foil paper to imitate the sacred substances, and they tossed gold and silver colored confetti into the air in place of gold dust, which they used to use. The ancient people of India considered gold the sacred semen of Agni, the fire god, and therefore they donated gold for any service performed by Agni's priest. It's hard to find information about the pagan or magical origins of money, I believe there's a conspiracy to cover up the magical origins of our society. They don't want people to know magic, understand magic, practice magic. They don't want you to know that the Bible has anything to do with magic, much less understand how to make magic a part of your life. And they don't want you to understand the magical origins of money. But it's there. Temples were the first banks. That's not hard to find. I got a book by a guy named Glenn Davies in the History of Money, and he's talking throughout this thing about how Babylonians were the ones who started banks and how temples were where the first banks were. So the disc, the coin, represents the stars and the sun. They're all circles. Coins are circles, and it represented heaven. And so when I stamp my face on the sun, I'm saying I am the sun god. And so when Caesar stamps his face on a coin, he's deifying himself as God. And it's basically an old system to where I'm the head and you're my body, and all the people that serve the king are the king's body. That's why ancient kings in Assyria and Babylon and Egypt were depicted as giants, is because the whole city was their body. So they were a giant, and that's what gave them their power. And the fact that their faces were stamped on the gold was saying that all of your money is my wealth, it's my body, and it belongs to me. So I'm allowing you to use the richness of my soul substance. That's what they were doing. And it's old magic, y'all. But, so, the word beast, we're talking about the mark of the beast and the name of the beast, the image of the beast. The word beast is Thurion, I believe is how you say it. And if it's translated into Hebrew letters, its value is also 666. So it's kind of pointing you in the same direction there, which is fascinating. And the Roman numeral system was built upon 6 letters. The I, the V, the X, the L, the C, the D. The M was 2 D's back to back, and that's where they got the M from. So there were actually just 6 letters. So the I is 1, the V is 5, the X is 10, the L is 50, the C is 100, the D is 500. Add that up, you get 666. So their entire system of counting money was even marked with the mark of the beast. This ain't rocket science, it's just cryptography, y'all. The only other mention of the number 666 in the Bible is in the book of Kings, 1 Kings 10, chapter 10, verse 14. And it says, "Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold." So the only mention of 666 in the Old Testament is referring to a bag of gold. It's referring to money. But the mark of the beast is more than just money. It's not just money. Money is not the problem. It's advantage over others. It's that you'll be put to death without it. That's the problem. In Israel, they had a thing called the Jubilee. And part of the Jubilee was the idea that God gave this land to his people and it could never be taken from them. And all of the 12 tribes of Israel had land that could never be taken from them. And on that land, they had the means to provide for themselves whatever they needed. And people that were not equipped to participate in the system were provided for. They had food. Their land could never be taken from them. They could glean the corners of the fields throughout the year. Parts of the harvest were always given to them. Like, the idea is that even if they didn't have money, they could still have a life. Wouldn't that be nice? Nothing like that exists in America. I don't have no kind words for that. I see all of this suffering and damnation reaped upon people's heads because they can't get enough money. You got people living like princes on yachts, owning 1 million acres and islands. Like, look at this Johnny Depp nonsense. And what's all that money got him? Is he happy? No. All these rich people ain't happy, and all these poor people ain't happy, and everybody's miserable because people are selfish and they don't give a damn about anybody. And you can go die under a bridge. And look at all these people starving to death out here on the streets. Why do you think they're doing drugs? Because they're told their life is worthless and they want to die. I ain't got no kind words for this. I mean, I probably saw 40 bums with the sign today. How do you think them people got there? They're broken. Relationships are broken, and this thing about money, I'm headed straight towards relationships, because relationships is the problem we're having. We're having a relationship crisis in this United States and across the globe. People don't know how to have healthy relationships. They can't have a healthy relationship with themselves. They can't have one with others, and it's destroying the world. And it's the problem from every person under the bridge to every person sitting on a throne thinking they're a God above you ruling your life. So it makes me sick, y'all. So, the image of the king, a man god on a coin, or the image of a man god in gold. You'll find that in the Bible. You'll find that all over the Bible. But one of the best places you'll find it is in the book of Daniel. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he had a dream. And, I don't want to say stuff wrong. I get mixed up. I'm not going to lie. But I believe he had a dream. I think this was the dream that he wouldn't tell nobody what the dream was, and he was going to kill all the wizards in Babylon. And Daniel's like, oh, I'll save the wizards. Nobody wants to call these people wizards. They're wizards. Daniel was a wizard. It's funny. It's funny to me. People have been lying to y'all about what the Bible is. Anyways, so he has a dream, and it's about a statue, and there's a head of gold and a torso of silver and midsection of bronze, something like that. And feet of iron mixed with clay. And then a rock flies from heaven and shatters the statue and scatters it all over the earth. And he doesn't know what it means, and it scares him. And Daniel interprets the dream for him, saves all the wizards. And but King Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, and his kingdom of Babylon was the best ever. It's the golden kingdom, and none of them are as good as that. What's interesting about why Babylon was the best, they had an irrigation system. The city was built on a river. There was fruit growing down the streets in all directions. Like, nobody was hungry in Babylon. You could walk down the street and eat all day long for free. It's similar to what God provided for Israel. Is a paradise. It's similar to the Garden of Eden, which is what they're implying. And that's why it was the head of gold, because it got worse for people the longer mankind got to go on, because people got more and more selfish. So Daniel interprets the dream for King Nebuchadnezzar, and it goes to his head. And so the next thing he does in the next chapter is he builds a giant statue of gold, which is most likely him. Me, I'm the great king of Babylon. And Daniel's giving him a bad omen and telling him it's a bad thing. And he's like, oh, I'm this great thing. And I'll just read what it says. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 80 cubits and the breadth thereof 6 cubits, and he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king set to gather together the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, governors, captains, judges, treasurers, counselors, and sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and a herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, languages, that what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And whosoever falleth not down and worshipeth, the same hour shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psalter, and all the kinds of music, and all the people, the nations, the languages, fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. If you don't worship the image, you will die. If you don't ascribe the power of God to this golden statue, you'll be put to death. It's the mark of the beast. Right there. Right there in the book of Daniel. Nobody's telling the truth about the Bible, y'all. How did I figure this out? I didn't go to school. I've just been buying books and hanging out in my bedroom studying the Bible. Trying to be a good Christian. Nobody wants to talk about this. It's all over the Bible. This ain't it. We're just getting started. I don't want to get into Darius, the king of Persia, but after Babylon falls, Persia takes over. Daniel's hanging out with Darius. Darius was probably Cyrus. You got several Dariuses. It gets confusing. I don't want to explain it all. But, so, this is Daniel 6, chapter 6. The other wizards were getting mad at Daniel because Daniel was always finding favor because he actually had the power of God and the power of magic, and they were faking it, trying to glorify themselves and have power over the king and, distribute fortunes to themselves, which we'll come back to that. So the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, and they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. And they said, we can't find anything to burn him with, paraphrasing, except we find it concerning the law of his God. So they're like, we're going to have to set him up because of his faith. And they assembled together the king and said, Darius, oh, King Darius, live forever. And all the presidents of the kingdom and the governors and the princes and counselors and captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask petition of any god or man for 30 days except thee, O king, because you're God, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed according to the laws of Medes and Persian, which altereth not. Therefore, King Darius signed the decree. They blew a bunch of smoke. He's like, that's a good idea. I'm God above men, and everybody should worship me, and they should die if they don't. Mark of the beast again. Be put to death if you don't worship the image. If you don't take the image of the king and put him into your mind and say, he is God above me, and he should rule my life. Why are y'all doing that? Why do you think these people should rule your life? Stand up and be responsible. Be accountable for your own life. Why do you think you need a God in the flesh above you to rule you? Why can't you just stand up and be a man or a woman and do the things you're supposed to do? You need somebody else to do them for you? How long are we going to do this? How long are we going to play this game, mankind? As long as you delegate your responsibilities to somebody else, you're going to be a slave. And you can go do somebody else's responsibility for them, and we can all trade, and maybe somebody's going to get the lowest end of the stick and have to clean the sewer. Ha ha ha, screw them. I'm sitting in a jacuzzi. You're cleaning the sewer, and you deserve it because I'm better than you. It's disgusting, y'all. I don't care. I'm going to say it like it is. And y'all all know it, and y'all all think you're great until you got to suck it up and do something you hate, and then you're miserable, and you're talking so much smack about everybody else why you got to be miserable and do something you don't want to do. Well, you all ascribe to this system by worshiping the image of the beast. Man. See, I'm pent up is what it is. Yeah, I don't get to let this stuff. I've been praying to God to let me have a voice and to start saying this stuff in public. Here we go. Yeah, we'll see how this goes over. So, the king established the decree, and he put it in writing and he sealed it. And when Daniel knew the writing was signed, he went to his house and opened the chambers and kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks to God as he did all the time. And the men found him praying, and he gets cast in the lion den. And so the king sealed the decree with his seal. They had a signet or a seal, and that seal is the mark of the beast. It's the image of the king's power. And let me show you a couple of these seals. So this is Cyrus the Ashanite, the son of Tephis. And I believe this was the great-grandfather of Cyrus the Great, who conquered Babylon. But this image is depicting him pursuing a wounded enemy, and it sends a clear message. The great king will destroy his enemies, sparing none. So the idea is, you break the seal, you die. And that's what the seal is a picture of, the king killing you. You violate this seal, I'm going to kill you. Don't worship the image, you're going to die. So, not hard to figure out there. This is the seal of Darius the Great, I believe, or Darius the Third. And it depicts him hunting lions. And the idea is that the 2 trees on either side are they're tree spirits, and they represent the divine favor blessing the king to slay the lion. So the god above him is how do you say it? Ahura Mazda. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. And that's the man with the wings, and he's in the sun disk, and that's a common image from the Assyrian Empire and the Persian Empire. And so Nimrod was the mighty hunter before the Lord. Here you have a picture of a mighty hunter before Ahura Mazda and the 2 tree spirits, which are empowering him to slay the lions. And it's threatening. He's going to kill the beast. I can kill the beast, I can kill you. You violate this seal, you're going to die. That's the idea. Here's 2 more images from that era. We don't actually have the Darius the Mede, who was the one who sealed Daniel in the lion's den. We don't have a record of his seal, and they don't even know who he was. I believe he was Cyrus the Great, and we don't have the specific seal of Cyrus the Great. They have some images from him, but as far as like this type of seal, they don't have it, as far as I understand. But so here's 2 seals. The top one is depicting Cambyses II taking slaves by the neck with a rope while dominating the Pharaoh of Egypt with the spear to his throat. He is also being blessed by 2 tree spirits. The seal at the bottom represents an Archimede king taking lions by the neck. So all of these Persian kings, their seals represented slavery, subjugation, and death for violating the seal, which I'll put you to death for not worshiping the image. Daniel chapter 9, you have what's known as the abomination of desolation. And it's in several passages of Daniel. Daniel chapter 9, you have the prophecy of the 70 weeks of Daniel. I almost completed an entire book on the 70 weeks of Daniel, and it's a complicated prophecy, but it's an important prophecy, and it's the nexus of all prophecy. All Old Testament prophecy before the 70 weeks of Daniel unifies with that vision that Daniel had. And all New Testament prophecy and all prophecy after that point also connects to the 70 weeks of Daniel. It is a prophecy that connects all biblical prophecy in the center. It's really an amazing subject, but it's complicated. But the idea that the tribulation is 7 years is largely because of the 70 weeks of Daniel. And that last 7 years of time is described, this is Daniel 9:27, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. For the overspreading of the abomination he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Just as abomination of desolation. And the abomination of desolation is the setting up of an idol in the temple of God. So, you got the temple of God, you got the Ark of the Covenant, and the holiest of holies. Somebody comes in with a foreign idol and puts it in there and defiles the temple with another god. Like, that's the concept of the abomination of desolation. And if you've never heard of that, I'm sorry. Nobody's telling you anything at church where you go. You should ask your preacher about the abomination of desolation and watch him get nervous and talk in circles. And, we can talk about that later because there's a lot to it. And I don't really know because they're running businesses. You'll see the souls of men in the list of the fruits that the people that worship the image of the beast lusted after. And that's what's going on when your preacher's business is more important than you. And he doesn't explain what the Bible's talking about to you. And the abomination of desolation is a fundamental concept to all prophecy. And most of y'all have never heard of it. And you should wonder why. Just like you've never heard that the mark of the beast is money. That makes me sick. But the abomination of desolation has many shadows in the history of Israel in the Old Testament. And it starts in the Garden of Eden. I don't know how to do this subject. I mean, like I said, I wrote a whole book about the 70 weeks of Daniel, and it deals largely with the concept of the abomination of desolation. And it's like, I got to write a whole book to explain this stuff. I don't know how to just say this stuff quickly to you. So the abomination of desolation is set up by an antagonist, and Daniel has a series of visions, I believe from chapter 7 to the end of the book. And in these series of visions, there's several antagonists, and they share a common thing, which they stop the sacrifice and the oblation, which that's the sacrifice of the oblation represents the entirety of the Israelite ritual, the blood ritual that they did. The sacrifice of the oblation is the daily sacrifice. The daily sacrifice represents all sacrifice. But it's the daily version. You got the Passover, you got the Day of Atonement, you got the daily sacrifice. And the daily sacrifice is the breath or the heartbeat of the system. And the Passover and the Day of Atonement are more elaborate expressions of what the daily sacrifice expresses. So to say that somebody ceases the sacrifice and the oblation is to cease the whole ritual system of Israel. And this is from my book. but each description of the antagonist in the visions of Daniel have commonalities between them. In chapter 7, a king is described as a blasphemer god who afflicts God's people. He changes the times and the laws and is given power over the saints to persecute them. In chapter 8, a king of fierce countenance is said to magnify himself above God and use peace, policy, and craft to destroy many. Peace, policy, like Christ, it's a good thing, So similar to that. And he'll come with an army and stop the daily sacrifice and cast down God's sanctuary. Casting down God's sanctuary is very similar to putting your foreign idol in it. You're defiling the temple with your own authority, the authority of another god. It's kind of like capture the flag. The abomination of desolation is like capture the flag. If I get into your goal zone or your end zone or whatever, and I put my flag there instead, I put my football there, then I win. But in chapter 9, we have the prince of the people who destroys the city and the sanctuary, seemingly ceases the sacrifice and sets up the abomination of desolation. Chapter 11, a king is described as a vile person who exalts himself above God and hates God's covenant. He seeks counsel from God's enemies, manipulates others with flatteries, deceptions, and promises of peace to get whatever he wants. He pollutes the sanctuary, he ceases the sacrifice, and he sets up the abomination of desolation. And so these are the antagonists from the final series of visions in the Book of Daniel. And so you have a history of people that fit this description, and most people, the Jews, believe that the prophecy of the 70 weeks was fulfilled with Antiochus Epiphanes. And in 167 BC, Antiochus Epiphanes, he was a Seleucid king, which was after Alexander the Great died and his kingdom split into 4 kingdoms. Antiochus retook control of Jerusalem by force after a civil conflict. In an attempt to Hellenize the region, he outlawed all worship and sacrifice to Yahweh by threat of death. He set up an idol of himself in the temple and offered sacrifices to Zeus. That's from Encyclopedia Britannica, an article on Antiochus Epiphanes. If he set up an idol of himself, then he was saying he was Zeus, or he set up an idol of Zeus and worshiped Zeus in the temple. People say a lot of different stuff about all this stuff. It takes a lot of work to really sort it all out. And so, in 100 years later, in 67 BC, Pompey the Great laid siege on Jerusalem. He attacked the temple and slaughtered the priests. He allowed the sacrifice to resume the day after he defiled the sanctuary with his presence. He went in the holiest of holies. He wasn't supposed to go in there. Herod the Great also besieged Jerusalem and assaulted the sanctuary in 37 BC. Herod fought to minimize the damage of the Roman army to the temple and the people taking refuge in the temple. During the siege, when the Jews were running out of animals to sacrifice, they petitioned Herod to supply them with more so the sacrifices would not cease. Josephus says Herod agreed to comply, but when the Jews continued to oppose Herod, he assaulted the city. He does not specify the sacrifice actually ceased or not, only that they slayed men, women, and children brutally without remorse. And it doesn't say that Herod defiled the sanctuary, and Herod was popular among the Jews after he took them over. He built Herod's temple, and that's the temple that was around when Jesus was alive, and it was a world wonder almost. And then Titus Vespasian, after Jesus died in 70 AD, destroyed Jerusalem and the sanctuary. The Hebrew blood ritual ceased from the earth to this very day when Titus destroyed Jerusalem. So all of these men are a shadow of the abomination of desolation and ceasing the sacrifice of Israel. And there's a lot of concepts. The sacrifice that God accepts is a broken heart, and one that repents of sin. one that stops lifting itself up above others to serve themselves as a god and subjugate others to their will and use them to get what you want, even if it destroys others, that kind of thing. But all of this goes back to the Garden of Eden. The original abomination of desolation, the original image that was set up in the temple of God, the original idolatrous image that was set up in the temple of God, was in the Garden of Eden. The serpent came into the temple. Adam was the high priest, and he should have killed the serpent upon sight. No questions asked, but he heard Eve out, he heard the serpent out, he ate the fruit too. Instead, he didn't do his job as a high priest. But the serpent comes in. Did God say? He changes the law with craft and policy. Just like these other shadows or these other visions that Daniel had of the abomination of desolation, which is the same thing as the seal of the Persian kings and the image of King Nebuchadnezzar, that you'd be put to death if you didn't respect it and give it life. Which is the mark of the beast. But the serpent comes in and says, Eve, you can be God if you decide for yourself. Elohim, God, means a judge. Judge decides good and evil. You can take the knowledge of good and evil for yourself and rule mankind as a God. And what does she do? She takes from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She decides for herself, putting herself above God and Adam, mankind. And then she distributes the fortunes of knowing good and evil for herself as a God to Adam. She gives it to Adam, which means Adam means mankind. So Satan put the idea in her mind, an image of herself as a god, and she believed the image, she embodied it, and she identified with it. And when you identify with the energy form that you embody, you give it life. She gave life to the image of the beast right there. And that culminated into a seven-headed beast with a woman riding around on its back, drunk with the blood of the saints, destroying the world. These images mean something. When you identify with yourself as more valuable than anybody else, and you think you're above others and you're more important, and who cares if they die as long as I get what I want, you got the mark of the beast. To have the mark of the beast on your forehead means it rules your mind. To have it on your hands means it rules everything that you do. Is money ruling everything that we do? Is money our way of getting advantage over others? Getting advantage over resources? Taking more of the souls of others? Because what you're doing when you work is you're transforming your soul substance into what you produce. And then the money makes it exchangeable for somebody else's soul substance, And so you get more money, you get more power. You get more power over the souls of others to do what you want them to do, to serve you. You get mad at the waitress, you get mad at people in traffic, you got the mark of the beast, y'all. Oh, you cut me off, I should be first. Oh, yeah. It's the mark of the beast. Are you ruled by anger, wrath, envy, jealousy? You're not getting your way, you gonna kill somebody? You shooting at somebody driving down the road? Because that's happening all the time, y'all. Because you got the mark of the beast. The character, the charagma of the beast. God gives good spirit. The Holy Spirit is the way out, y'all. Love, joy, peace, kindness, patience, gentleness, meekness, goodness. That's the way out. You want to get out of the mark of the beast? I'm going to try to motivate you. We're going to look at what the rest of Revelation says about the mark of the beast, and hopefully it will motivate you to find the way out. The way back to the presence of God. That's what you need. Because God has an image too. That's the one you want to embody. That's what Hebrew literature is all about. They're presenting two images of God, the creator and the destroyer, the giver of life and the taker of life. Which one are you going to summon? Which one are you going to embody and give life to? And collectively as a species, when all of us summon the destroyer, we destroy the planet. And that's what Revelation is all about. about the collective consciousness creating an image of God that rules the earth. We're all responsible for this. Stand up and be responsible for your life. But so Satan coming into the temple and seducing Eve to embody the image of herself as a god is the abomination of desolation, and it's the mark of the beast. When God flooded the world with Noah, all of mankind summoned the destroyer. They were warring, enslaving, raping each other all over the globe, and that's all they did, to the point that God was so disgusted that he unleashed the waters of chaos that he subdued in the 6 days of creation. He unleashed the flood waters back on the earth. The earth was covered in water. There was no land. It just went back to where it started. God removed his magic boundaries. He said, "Let there be light," he divided light from darkness. He divided heaven from sea. He divided land from sea. You get the mystic mountain. God removed those magic barriers that create space for consciousness to thrive and let the flood waters take over the earth. Those flood waters, the earth was the temple of God to house his spirit. The flood waters of destruction coming back into the temple of God, that mystic mountain space, that's the same thing. That's the abomination of desolation. Destroying the temple of God. So you have the mark of the beast and the flood with Noah. I'm going to skip over the Tower of Babel, but you have it in the Tower of Babel too. So after the flood, Noah's son Ham, in Genesis 9 verse 20, it says, "Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham the father of Canaan saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon their shoulders, and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backwards, so they saw not their father's nakedness." And then Noah cursed Canaan, which was Ham's son. Nakedness of his father is a old euphemism, and it, you can interpret this 2 ways. Either he saw the nakedness of his father, which was Noah's wife, and he had sex with Noah's wife, which is most likely what it was, since that's the reoccurring theme throughout Scripture, believe it or not. Or he had sex with Noah. As some scholars believe he had sex with Noah, some people believe he had sex with his mom. A lot of scholars believe these are the origins of all of the mystery religions that have the mother-son structure of their gods, like Isis and Osiris. I don't know. All these pagan gods, their moms are sleeping with the sons. It's idolatry. It's heathenism. And I'm not going to get into any of that. But so Ham is the destroyer. He goes into the sacred house of his father and defiles his mother. That's what I believe happened. If he defiled Noah, it's not much different. He's entering the sanctuary and defiling the temple. This is the destroyer coming in and defiling the sacred place. It happens again. David's concubines with his son Absalom. Absalom subjugated, took the throne from David. And then in 2 Samuel 16:22, Absalom spread a tent on the top of the house and went unto his father's concubines in the sight of all of Israel. And this was his way of claiming the throne. Look, I kicked my father out, and I'm having sex with all of his wives, or concubines. Lesser status of wife. Sorry, y'all. They were into some messed up shit back then. But same thing. This is the abomination of desolation. So it's the mark of the beast. Athaliah was the daughter of Jezebel. In 2 Kings 11, verse 1, when Athaliah, the mother of Azariah, saw her son was dead, she lost her heir to the throne. She arose and destroyed all the seed royal, all the kings of Judah's children. She killed them all. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons which were slain, and she hid him, even his nurse, in the bedchamber from Athaliah, so that he was not slain. So he was the only heir to the throne, and the only one who saved what was the lineage of Jesus Christ. So, but her taking the throne and the temple go hand in hand, and it's sort of split in two, but it shared a common origin. Coincidentally, banks and palaces, temples and palaces were the first banks, which is the origin of wealth. It's the origin of the power of God. Hello, y'all. These connections are real, but I'm like saying that so nonchalantly, and it's like such a big deal. But Athaliah killing all of the heirs to the throne of Judah is the abomination of desolation and the mark of the beast as well. Judas Iscariot, when he betrayed Jesus Christ, he went into the temple and negotiated. I'll just read it in Matthew 26, verse 14. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests and said unto them, What will you give me that I will deliver him unto you? And the scribes and Pharisees. And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray Jesus. So the destroyer went into the temple and plotted the crucifixion of Jesus, which is the defilement of the sanctuary. He's killing God off the throne. That's what he's trying to do. It's abomination of desolation, mark of the beast. Got a bag of money sitting right there. You have a righteous shadow of this, and I haven't gotten into the mark of the beast connection with the 7 last plagues, but it's connected. Which is in Armageddon. The Battle of Armageddon is connected with the 7 last plagues of God at the end of time. And granted, there's going to come an end to these men gods subjugating mankind to their will and ruling them and putting them to death for not serving their image. That's what Revelation is all about. The end of the age that we're living in. This age of governments and banks dominating the world. It's the Bible promised 2,000 plus years ago that God's going to put a stop to this and that he hates it. The world order that we're living in, God says he hates it. Hebrew literature says he hates it so much he's going to pour out 7 vials of wrath on the earth and bring about Armageddon. And we're looking right at it, y'all. It's getting scary. Wait till monkeypox breaks out. God promised boils will break out all over mankind, and that's one of the vials of God's wrath for people taking the mark of the beast. Straight up. Hopefully monkeypox don't break out, but God promised boils pandemic of boils is coming. So, this monkeypox right on time. Yep. God promised the earth would burn. God promised the sun would burn. You got governments freaking out about solar flares burning the earth. I wonder why. God promised them it was going to happen. Maybe that's why they're terrified. Maybe the scientists told them, hey, y'all, solar flares are going to mess us up. But it's right on time. Earthquakes, wars, everything. If it ain't the end of time and the 7 last plagues of God's judgment being poured out on the earth, people have been suspicious of it for a long time, but we live in the age of information, and somebody's making it look like it is if it ain't. But so in Judges chapter 4, which is Deborah was the judge at the time, you had Deborah fight a battle in the valley of Megiddo, and the enemy general Sisera fled away on his feet, and this is from Judges 4 verse 17, and he fled to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, and there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in unto me, and fear not. And when he turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him to drink, and covered him. And again he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? Thou shalt say, No. And then Jael, Heber's wife, took the nail of the tent, and took the hammer in her hand, and went in softly unto him while he was asleep, and smote the nail in through his temple, and fastened it into the ground. And so he died. She put the spike in this side, threw that side into the ground. That's what she did. And she gets a lot of praise for this, but this is the positive. I don't want to say the shadow, because the negative image is the shadow, but this is an image of the abomination of desolation that's righteous. He's the destroyer. He came in unto an Israelite woman's sanctuary, and she murdered him. She deceived him, gave him what he wanted, and murdered him. So it's the picture of destroying the abomination of desolation when it defiles the sanctuary. And that's why she gets so much praise, and it's Battle of Megiddo, so it's a shadow of Armageddon, much props to Jael. The Song of Deborah almost says more praise of Jael than anybody else in the whole song, and that's Judges chapter 5 is the Song of Deborah. God bless her soul. In 2 Thessalonians, you have direct mention of the abomination of desolation, I believe. Let me just read it to you. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by the gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come an apostasy, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped. I'm above God. So that he that sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. You're going to make yourself God in God's place. That's the abomination of desolation. The son of perdition, that's a title of Judas Iscariot, who went into the temple to crucify Christ. So, it goes on to say, Remember ye not that when I was with you I told you these things, and now you know what hasn't happened yet, that he might be revealed in it, that the man of sin might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let. God, this is a terrible translation. Only he who alloweth will let it be. I don't know. I shouldn't be trying to translate right now. But until he be taken out of the way. And then that wicked one shall be revealed, who the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, just like the mark of the beast. And the beast is the power of miracles and deceptions. It's the same thing. And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. That's telling you want to be saved from this magic, from these images taking control of your mind and your life, and you giving power to these evil hierarchies of men gods ruling you and subjecting you to death for not worshiping them. Then love the truth. Seek after God, and he'll expose this whole thing to you, and you can be free of it. It's a promise, and I'm telling you, God will make good on this promise. And for this cause God shall send people that don't love the truth a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they might all be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. You sign up to worship this image, you embody it, and you give it life, and you let it rule your life, you're going to suffer the consequences. You're going to be deluded. There's only one way out. You got to drink water. Keep drinking alcohol, you're going to die. You're going to be poisoned. You need hydration. But there's a lot going on in this passage. Um, by the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, where does Jesus Christ come? He comes inside you. That's where he lives, inside of the temple of your body. And don't be troubled or shaken in mind. Let no man deceive you. Don't be deceived. Deception's magic. When I tell you a lie, so you believe something besides the truth, I'm possessing you with an energy form that you embody and give life to, and act according to my will instead of the will of reality. Like, if you knew the truth, you wouldn't have done what I wanted you to do. You know, I deceived you. It's magic, y'all. And but let no man deceive you, for the coming of Christ, it's not going to happen. There's got to be an apostasy first, the falling away of the cross. You're going to have to suffer the consequences of sin before you're ever going to embody Christ. You're going to have to suffer first. Suffering is what leads you away from embodying the destroyer, and letting the abomination of desolations set up in your heart. And the man of sin be revealed, the man of apostasy, the man who defiles the sanctuary, it's you. You got to see it. You got to see yourself in the dark mirror. You got to see the dark reflection of yourself. And shine a light on it. Say, let there be light. Drive the darkness out. You got to see that you betray and crucify Christ every time you lift yourself up as a God to do what you want and cause others to suffer to get what you want. Son of perdition, Judas Iscariot. We're all Judas Iscariot when we crucify Christ to get what we want. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he himself is God. You're going to lift yourself up as God. This is what he did in the garden. And you're going to sit in the temple of God. It's your body. The mystery of iniquity, it's like saying the cult of lawlessness. The mysteries were the mystery religions, and these were the governments that ruled the world, and they were secret societies of magicians. They were secret societies of magicians ruling the people. It's a long history of the mystery religions, and I believe they've never died, and they're alive and well today. So once you learn what magic is, you'll see how it's being used against the public today. There's magic everywhere. And the reason all of y'all are suffering and your lives are completely out of control is because people are casting spells on you. I'm just going to say, I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I'm telling you the truth. Somebody needs to. But, so the mystery of iniquity is the cult of lawlessness, where people cast off doing right and serving love, joy, kindness, patience, gentleness, meekness, and goodness. There's a law to those things, and you have to behave in a certain way to produce those kinds of fruits in your relationships. You're going to have to be lawless to destroy love, joy, kindness, gentleness, meekness, goodness, patience, and peace. You're going to have to be lawless to do that, to create suffering, and to lift yourself up above others to get what you want at their expense. And you can think, oh, I worked hard for my Reeboks, but when, the building collapsed on a bunch of Asian kids to get your Reeboks, maybe you're not so innocent. When it says only he who now letteth will let, it's the word kata eka, which means to hold back. He who's held back, until he be taken out of the way. So the mystery of lawlessness already works. And what's held back is that the man of sin is making himself God in the temple. Once the man of sin is taken out of the way, you take the abomination of desolation out of your heart, and you stop worshiping yourself as a God, is what it's saying. Then that wicked one who put the abomination of desolation and defiled the temple, which is you worshiping yourself as a god, that wicked one will be revealed, and the Lord shall consume it with the spirit of his mouth. That says, let there be light. That inspires the word of God that you're reading. The word of God is going to cast the light to drive the abomination of desolation out of the temple to cleanse the sanctuary. That's what it's saying, to cleanse you. And the Lord will destroy it with the brightness of his coming. The light of God will fill you, and it'll destroy the destroyer. And the destroyer came after the working of Satan that said, you can be God if you take the power of God for yourself and rule others with it. You can get what you want, make others do it for you. You know, which is where money comes from. Money is just the fruit on the tree of this thing. Money is not a problem if you don't put people to death without it. But once you start forcing people to worship your power over them at threat of death, then we're in a whole nother ballgame. This is just it's something that's real, but it's also just a metaphor for selfishness. But I think that about sums that up. You'll find a shadow of this with the king of Babylon. Isaiah 14 verse 4 through 15 says, thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, who's a man god ruling mankind as God above man. That's what we're talking about. And say, how hath the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased? The Lord hath broken the staffs of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is rest and is quiet, and they break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Hell from beneath us is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. Hell is excited to eat your soul, O great king that subjected others to tyranny, that put people to death for not worshiping your image. It stirreth up the dead for thee, and even all the chief ones of the earth have raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations, and they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou become as weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Thou pomp hast brought down to the grave, and the nose of the vile, and the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Oh, you died too. You're just like us. You're not a god. No, you're coming down here with us. Like, imagine all the people in their graves dragging somebody down into the underworld. Like, that's what this is describing. How thou art fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How thou art cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations. Because Babylon conquered the world. He destroyed all the nations, took them over, enslaved all the people. And you're going to die just like us. And we're excited to bring you here. Thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend to heaven, and I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. And I will also sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. And I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, into the sides of the pit. So, the only mention of Lucifer in the entirety of the Bible is a title of the king of Babylon. Now, why people call him the, they're missing the point. You say it's a devil with wings, you don't got to face the fact that it's any person that lifts themselves up above other men to rule them and subjugate them to their will, selfishly. There's a line in here. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Adolf Hitler, he used the swastika, but he turned it around backwards. The swastika was the wheel of peace. It was a global symbol scattered across the whole face of the earth, and it represented the prosperity of life. and it was a symbol of peace, and it was a wonderful symbol. And it was the Big Dipper in its positions of the equinoxes and the solstices. You can get that out of a book written by Zelia Natal. It was Ancient Civilizations and Calendars of the Old World or something like that. I hate not telling you the title of that book. It's a great book, though. Adolf Hitler turned the symbol around backwards, and basically, if the symbol represented the Big Dipper, when you look up at it, Adolf Hitler flipped it around backwards, which is saying that I'm above the stars of heaven, looking down at the earth. They believe the earth was surrounded by a sphere of stars, or when Adolf Hitler was around, they understood the people's understanding of the stars is kind of a complex thing that I shouldn't even get into. But so Adolf Hitler was saying he's God above heaven, looking down at the earth. That's why he flipped the swastika around backwards. And this verse from Isaiah chapter 14 reflects this ideology, which is fascinating. So I'm going to go back to the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation, now that we have a better understanding of what it is. Revelations 14:9 through 11, a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. I kind of think this is talking about in life more than afterlife. This is where the idea of hell comes from. People that worship the image of the beast go to hell. And all these people that worship men's authority over them and worship their own authority over others, they're all miserable and in hell. They're all driving around cussing, screaming, angry, hating everybody, hating all the people you love, destroying your families, divorcing, adulterating, cheating, lying, stealing. Yeah, y'all are all a bunch of scumbags. And I've been there, and hopefully I won't be there again, but it happens, and it'll happen to you too, Go fill yourself with light to get out of that. But depending on how you interpret it, going to hell forever, or you're suffering hell now. It's one or the other. But those are some harsh words. Revelations 15:2, and I saw there was a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name. They stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. Revelation 16:2, and the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, upon them which worshipped his image. Revelation 19:20, and the beast was taken with him, and the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. Now it's getting a little hard to get out of the idea of eternal hell, but Revelation 20 verse 4, I saw thrones, and them that sat upon them, judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither received his mark upon his foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years, which Kilia is the word thousand. It could be plural, it could be 2,000 years, could be right where we're sitting now. It could be a metaphorical thousand for an age, which an age is 2,000 years, right back to it. I don't want to get into any of that. So You can't buy or sell without it. It's money. You have buying and selling mentioned several times in Revelation. I'm going to read this passage, which is about the fall of Babylon, which is from Revelation chapter 18. It's where this mark of the beast thing was leading to. It says, "For all the nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of the harlot of Babylon's fornication," which this is Eve riding around on the back of the seven-headed dragon, which is the idolatry that started in the Garden of Eden, overtaking the earth as a world ruling system. So, her fornication. "And the kings of the earth had committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues," which is similar to the other verses I just read about the mark of the beast. "For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she is rewarded unto you, and double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she has filled to her, double. And how much hath she glorified herself and lived deliciously? So much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and I shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For such strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off, for the fear of torment. Alas, the great city Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour thy judgment is come, and the merchants of the earth shall weep, and they shall mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more." What do you got to have to buy her merchandise? You got to have the mark of the beast. "The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, of pearls, of fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and fine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of the most precious wood, and of brass, and of iron, and of marble, and of cinnamon, and of odors, and of ointments, and of frankincense, and of wine, and of oil, and of fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and the souls of men. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all the things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. And the merchants of these things that were made rich by her shall stand afar off in fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, the great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour thy riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster, and all the company of ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea and stood afar off world trade, and they cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And now it's gone. And so you find buying and selling directly connected to Babylon, directly connected to the mark of the beast. And it's about exchanging your life and your responsibilities with another person, and giving responsibility of your life to somebody else, and taking responsibility of somebody else's life for yourself. This is what's destroying the world, y'all. It's a relationship crisis. Straight up. We don't know how to treat each other. We don't know how to treat ourselves. The mark of the beast, it's in chapter 13 where we started. We're going to end at the beginning. It says in verse 15, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak. So the image of the beast was given a voice. Back in 2010 or 11, the Supreme Court had a case, Citizens United versus the FEC, the Federal Election Committee, and in that case, the majority ruled that the freedom of the press clause of the First Amendment protects associations of individuals in addition to individual speakers, and further that the First Amendment does not allow prohibitions of speech based upon identity of the speaker. Corporations, as associations of individuals, therefore have free speech rights under the First Amendment, because spending money is essential to disseminating speech, as established in Buckley versus Vallejo. Limiting a corporation's ability to spend money is unconstitutional because it limits the ability of its members to associate effectively and to speak on political issues. And basically, in this Supreme Court case, they declared corporations to have the same rights as an individual's human rights. So corporations have human rights as individuals, and corporations and money is a form of speech. So they gave money a voice in that case. They said money has a voice. And I thought that was creepy as could be. I thought, man, the second I heard that, I was like, oh man, that's what Revelation says about the mark of the beast. So I'm going to stop with all of that. And I hope that you find your own way in life. I hope, we're all on a journey and we're all suffering. I hope you find the way to end suffering. That's what Buddhism's about. The Word of God is a way of stopping your own thoughts and ideas, and it presents ideas to you that you can embody and give life to. And depending on how you do it, it can be a really positive or negative thing. I think the intent of Hebrew literature is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I think it wants to give life to the spirit that created the universe through you. And I believe that's our purpose, is to embody the spirit of creation. And that we all possess the power of creation, and we're going to either use it to summon the creator or the destroyer. One or the other. You got to decide, and I hope you find the way back to the creator, because the destroyer, I've had enough of that misery, and maybe you have too. And God bless y'all.